to the end of the second official full day of the conference. Are you having fun? You're lying because you're security people. I know you don't have fun. We know that, right? Is it true that security people are always sad about something? No, it's not true. Come on. If you saw people drinking last night like I did, you know it's not true, right? Well, I'm at a security conference. If you've talked to me today, you probably know I've told you I'm not a security analyst. I'm an application developer by birth, which makes me the natural enemy of a security analyst. But I'm not focused primarily on security. But the interesting thing is, I travel a lot, and I do a lot on presentations like this one about disruptions and everything, and I am in some of the most ridiculous, unsecure situations you'll ever see. I have had tiger sharks stalk me from close range. I've had bull elephants try to stomp me to death. I've had black mamba snakes try to kill a friend of mine while I was there. Always these unsecure situations. And I've never felt as unsecure as I do at this conference. I listen to you guys talking and I'm scared. There's a lot of security issues going on. At the same time, I see laptops left open. Haven't you heard the story about I'll call him John Doe analyst, who at a security conference left his laptop open in the analyst workroom? Now you know what happened. Somebody got on that laptop and typed, "Help me, I'm John Doe's laptop. I've been left alone at a security conference and I'm wide open." John Doe has never lived it down. So don't you be in that problem. Don't you be in that situation, because it can disrupt your life. And I'm here to talk to you about disruptions. I'm going to talk to you about what disruption is, how we look at disruption, how you can anticipate disruption, what you might want to do about it, and I'm going to go through 7 disruptions you might not see coming. Now, this presentation was created to talk about a crop of disruptions that are trends that have been around for a while. You may have heard of them, but you generally don't realize how close they are to reality. And I'm going to try to give you a sense of that. I'm also going to try to give you a sense of some of the security implications of these disruptions if they progress as expected. So that's what we're going to do here. You ready? You've had your coffee for the afternoon? You're awake? All right, well, here we go. So let's start here. We love pulling disruptions out because disruptions are things that often change your thinking, your mindset. On the screen, you're seeing the 7 disruptions that we catered to last year, actually. And we try to pull these things up because we want you to understand that disruptions are things that come and stay with us. They linger in our lives. They're not something that comes and goes. They're not fads. You know, we have these things, features, we have fads, and we have disruptions. Features we all know. When they add a new feature to a product, we all adopt it and we move on. Well, actually, many times they add a lot more features than we can adopt, so we note that they're there and we don't use them, and then we move on. But the reality is that we are used to those. Fads, on the other hand, are short-term things that come and go. Like, for instance, anybody here still playing Pokemon Go? There's one guy over here. It's a woman playing Pokemon Go. But if you played it at all, you're probably not playing it now. Because most people see a fad, it comes in, and then it goes away. But everything is the same after it's gone as it was before it happened. For instance, if you remember, I'm going to date myself a little bit here, pet rocks. Do you remember pet rocks? You know, people would carry these little rocks around and treat them like they're a pet. Well, since that fad has disappeared, to my knowledge, pets are still pets and rocks are still rocks. Nothing really changed. But in the disruption world, things change fundamentally. They shift themselves fundamentally so that they're not the same as they were before. And I'll explain a few examples of that and how it happens. So we're talking about true disruptions. True disruptions have been around for a long time, and they will be around forever. We are actually trying to cater to what they are. Our last list very clearly stated, quantum computing, repeated this year. The second one on the list is the one you should note most closely, counterfeit reality. Counterfeit reality is a term that I coined in 2000. We have written about it over the years, and last year we had 2 predictions about it in our top predictions, where we said counterfeit reality would affect political processes, in fact, a presidential election. And what did we hear recently? That Congress, the Intelligence Committee, is now investigating whether to ban what's called deep fakes, which is a form of counterfeit reality. Counterfeit reality is simply the creation of digital content that shows you or someone you know doing something they never did, but you can't tell it's not real. And that's what a deep fake is. So we're actually seeing some of these things come to fruition, and we're having to deal with them from a congressional standpoint. Nanotechnology remains on the list this year. Synthetic life has left the list. Having insects that built as robots rather than real ones. Quantum and magnetic levitation was great. I love stereo equipment. Now I'm going to tell you a joke I haven't told in a long time, but it's still true. And every time I think about it, I showed a levitating turntable last year. A levitating turntable. It's wonderful. It's very stable. And I'm a stereo guy. I like stereo, analog stereo. I like reel-to-reel tape decks and records on a disc platter and playing everything. I'm a guy who believes that. Well, look at it this way. If your speakers are not bigger than your spouse, you're just playing games. No real man has those tiny Bose cubes in his house. And if your spouse hates those giant speakers in their living room, you got the wrong spouse. I am a stereo guy. I love this stuff. And that was an interesting one because that magnetic levitating turntable is one of the best pieces of equipment I have. Software distribution marketplaces remains, and video perception and precognition has left the list. So this is the list from last year. I'm going to give you a new list where some of these are still on the list, and we'll understand why they're still there. First thing to understand about digital disruption, however, is it's not just about technology. We're not talking about a new technology came along and the world is disrupted. We're talking about how technology is used to disrupt societies, industries, business, and the business of technology itself. So if you have a new technology that comes along, blockchain is interesting. He said it, blockchain. Anybody playing blockchain bingo? Every time you hear the word blockchain, you have to take a drink. In case you are, blockchain, 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 blockchain. Save them up for tonight. Okay, but the reality is that a blockchain technology comes along, we start asking, how does this change banking? Not how it just changes databases. How does it change banking? Peer-to-peer lending, virtual currencies, open banking, all facilitated through the technology of blockchain. So it's changing an industry. Societies are changed by digital technologies as well. We all know that the cell phone, the mobile phone, is the center of our life today. Center of your life. The first thing you do when you get out of bed is you reach for that screen. If you're honest with yourself, you do. Because you got to see what Justin Bieber said today. Again, I'm dating myself. It's not Justin Bieber anymore. But the reality is we are always looking at those screens. Society has been changed because we have them, and we can do things with them we couldn't before. Business has changed. Business models are changing because of digital technology. Now you start looking at a business model where customers interact directly with product manufacturers to buy their goods. They don't have to go through a retailer. It's always a good idea, but you don't have to go through a retailer. So the models are changing around these new disruptive technologies, and that's why they're critical. Digital disruption is the critical discipline that you must learn for modern success. And if you're a security person, it is a critical discipline to understand because it will affect your security posture. It might affect privacy. It might affect data security and protection. It might affect the kind of data that's generated that you don't actually think about, but actually could be used to violate your security. So when we talk about these things, let's keep security in mind. Disruption helps you scale, either your business or your customer's business. Either one is fine, because the reality is that when you look at this thing, you find new ways to get to customers more frequently, and that can scale your business. So when you're thinking about it, are you going to reinvent or enter a new market? Is there a new market to be found, and can you actually take advantage of it because of a disruption? You ask the question, can you bypass barriers to customers? As I said, it's not necessarily for a customer to go through a retailer to get to products. What if you had this notion of an augmented reality mirror, a full-length mirror standing in your room? You could stand in front of it and say, put that outfit on me that Mark Harmon was wearing last night on CSI. Or is it NCIS? I get those shows confused. It's NCIS. Put it on me. You can stand in the mirror, move around, and see how the outfit looks on you. And then you can say, I like that. Please order it, optimize for availability, price, and delivery date. Now that's interesting. By the way, that mirror actually exists for jewelry. You can actually look at yourself wearing certain jewels and order through the mirror. These are things that change the way that we actually reach customers, and more customers can then engage 24/7 to scale that business. So we're really talking about ways of leveraging technology to build a new business, ways of finding new funding or revenue to support it, and resetting the game on business models. So if someone else dominates the game, just change it. Anybody remember a little company called Blockbuster? You don't see those anymore. There's a reason for it, because others changed the game around them. They didn't react fast enough, and they went away. So these are the disruptions that are going to help hurt you. Now, there are 5 styles of disruption. Willful disruption. When we say willful, we do not mean willful like a petulant child. We don't mean, I got disrupted, That's not what we're talking about. We're saying be deliberate about it. Be deliberate in your approach to disruption. There are 5 ways which you can do this. First, offensive disruption. Offensive says somebody made a better widget. Somebody invented something that's new that nobody else thought about. And they are then going to change the market. So in a way, you could say that streaming video on demand was a better widget. And so Blockbuster had to combat that. And the myth is that Blockbuster didn't want to do streaming. They did. They just did it a little too late and not with enough boldness, so they didn't really make it. But the reality is that we can offensively attack others and go out there. When the iPhone was released, there were already phones in the market. What they did is they said, we're going to combine a lot of different capabilities within the phone to create a new capability that no one else has. And that was an offensive threat to companies like Google, who employed a defensive strategy, call it Android. Android was positioned to say, hey, look, we're going to have an open ecosystem of providers of device manufacturers and the operating system to get to consumers from a lot of different manufacturers of devices. So now you can get Android devices of many different kinds, and you can only get one kind of iPhone per model. You can only get one from one source. So they effectively combated it. I have to ask the question, I always ask because I'm doing a survey, how many people in the room are iPhone users? That's a good number. How many people in the room are Android users? Fewer here than there. I would expect it to be the other way around. I would expect here there'd be more Android users. Why? Because security people are relatively technical people, and technical people love Android devices because you can tweak it. You can make it do anything you want. What do iPhone users want? They just want a phone that works. They just want to make a phone call, take a picture. There's a difference in mindset there. But the Android users are certainly possible today because of the rise of Android and Google's promotion of that mechanism. It was a defensive disruption to what Apple was doing, and it succeeded. Now, it didn't destroy Apple, didn't stop the iPhone, but without Android, the iPhone would be in the pockets of everyone here. By the way, who's still got a BlackBerry? One? No? Only one? Okay. All right. I had a BlackBerry for 8 years. You would have had to pry it from my cold, dead hands. Until the day I saw my first iPhone, I drove 3 hours to reach the ocean so I could throw the BlackBerry in and watch it sink while I go, ha, 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 ha. Things change, and we have to be ready to change with it. The third way, serendipity. Let's take advantage of the things that happen on their own, the things that happen through chance. A fortunate accident, that's serendipity. Now, when you start thinking about that, you have to ask yourself, how do I take advantage of things that I don't know they're going to happen? Well, you can actually cultivate serendipity as an attitude of your culture. You can actually get developers to build things and compete on the idea of creating something new that nobody ever thought. Think of it this way. Give every developer an Android Pie make kit or an Arduino make kit. These are $50 kits off of Amazon. Give them to your developers and say, now go out and make something cool. And then see if anything comes out of it that you can actually use. Now, that's the opposite way we normally do things. We think of what we want to use and what we can do, and then we build it. But here, you say, go build something cool, and we'll figure out if we can use it. Now, that comes up with some interestingly useless things. But it teaches people how to be creative in thinking. I went to a CIO's office, and he had on his desk a beautiful little box. It was nicely wooden work here. It had a little toggle switch on the front. I kept looking at it. At some point, he looks at me, he goes, flip the switch. So curiosity killed the cat. I flipped the switch. The box opened. A hand with a finger came out, flipped the switch off, went back in, the box closed. That's all it did. I looked at him and I said, what the heck have you got this on your desk for? He says, no. Before you judge, our developers learned how to control relays with that little toy. They learned how, and they didn't know. They had no developers for device control, and they were trying to build a robotics practice. So they actually started on that journey with that simple, useless toy. I remember my first app on my iPhone, it was the big lighter, cigarette lighter. You remember the cigarette lighter? You could flick it on the screen, it would light a flame. If you moved the phone around, the flame would move as if it were real. They told me version 3 would actually burn your finger when you touched the screen. I fell for it too. So disappointed. The reality is that I looked at that app and I downloaded it and I said, that is the most useless thing I have ever seen in my life, until I went to a concert. They don't let you bring open flame in there anymore, so what's everybody doing? They got the big lighter and they're going like this. It was a Elton John, Billy Joel concert. Pretty good one. So people come up with ideas for things. You have to cultivate new ideas. Let people do crazy things and you'll find fortune amongst those things. The fourth way is destructive innovation. Back to Blockbuster, destructive innovation. Blockbuster thought that the value was in the delivery mechanism, the videotape or the DVD or the video game cartridge. They didn't realize, as Netflix did, the value was in the content and its fungible nature. It could be changed into many different forms. It could be transmitted without people having to go to the store. And many people don't remember, Netflix was DVDs by mail at first. It took them a while to get to full streaming. So when you look at this, you can destroy a market without even being there in the marketing at the beginning yourself. You just have to evolve over time. And then the last one is the one that should be most important to everyone here, self-disruption. You have to figure out how to disrupt yourself before somebody else comes along and does it to you, okay? Disruption may not be something you do, but if it's not, it will be something that happens to you. So figure out how to disrupt. Example, again, Apple. Apple had the #1 iPod in the market. The #1 iPod in the market. And they decided to cannibalize that market by introducing the iPhone. Basically, anyone here have a standalone iPod anymore? Well, few people still do. You know, that's surprising to me, because now I only see 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds with standalone iPods, but there must be value to others as well. The thing is, they cannibalized the market knowing they would be doing so, because they said, if we don't do it, someone else will do it. And now they actually influence markets around personal navigation, around video, around messaging, around gaming, everything, because that phone cannibalized the other market. Do it before someone does it to you. These are the ways that you can disrupt willfully. These are the ways that you can make yourself more relevant in the digital age. So you have to be willful about it. Disruption has to be measured by intensity, though. You gotta know what it is. You gotta recognize it, prioritize it, what it means to you, and then respond to it. Okay, that's really interesting, and the rate of disruption doesn't have to be the same for everybody. Some people will disrupt a lot, some people will disrupt a little, but we have to be willing to look out and say, disruption is coming, because I see people's behavior beginning to change, not just the technology, not just an application project, but people's behavior is changing. I see that the models of business are beginning to chase that behavior. And I see the models of revenue and investment are supporting that change of behavior. That's when you recognize the disruption is on the way. And if you prioritize it for yourself and respond in the right way, you could be good. Well, you've got to be able to compare these things to do that. And in comparing them, you want to actually think, well, how do we actually know that they're good for us or not? Well, this busy little slide is talking about something about investing in disruption and making the decision to actually invest in disruption. How do you take money from a project that's already successful just to put it on something that might not work? Well, you have to be able to challenge yourself. Ask yourself these questions. Have your assumptions changed? Are you still assuming that the world is the way it was when you first started an initiative? And if you do that, you'll be able to make adjustments faster. I recommend a quarterly, monthly, biannually, whatever it is, process where you will routinely challenge the biggest assumptions about your business. Challenge the assumption. We used to challenge the assumption. I remember back in the days when security people were always talking about security. If everyone gets hacked, the world will fall apart and it'll collapse. It didn't. And our assumptions changed. Now it's often more about whether or not we can detect a breach and then remediate it. And that's a good thing. The LifeLock people? LifeLock is a company that their tagline is the Identity Theft Protection Company. But there's one thing that company never does. It's truly protect your identity from being stolen. They can't do it. What they do is detect the theft, and they respond to it so quickly that the theft doesn't hurt you. That's the position of a security person today, is to say, I need to detect and remediate. I need to balance risk versus opportunity, and I need to protect as best I can. So challenge the assumptions. Maybe you have a skunk works to try some things like the Arduino or Raspberry Pi work. Maybe you look at a market and say, is there a potential for it to build bigger than what we already sell into or buy from? Because just like the iPhone, it was bigger than the iPod. Look at your risk versus opportunity and look at M&A opportunities. Who are you going to partner with that might actually change your business to fit the disruption? Jack Welch says if the rate of change on the outside exceeds the rate of change on the inside, the end is near. So you got to be willing to actually take advantage of that rate of change. One way to do that is with our disruption vector mechanism. A disruption vector is a path over time that says, here's a path you're on. Like you sell TVs, you're going to keep selling TVs because now they're internet connected and now people are streaming. But at some point, maybe you should have gotten off the TV selling path and gotten on the video device path, tablets and so forth. 70% of all videos are watched on a device like that, not on a television set. So this is about finding when you should get on a different path than the one you're on. Get on a different path because the disruptions are changing things. Here you will see on the left-hand side of our chart the 7 disruptions that I'm going to go through here shortly. The 7 disruptions and where they are in impact. Note the chart. If you go up the curve to the left, up on the left, you're getting more impact from just enhancing a market by adding new capabilities to extending a market by making the people who are in it able to sell new items alongside of it, transforming a market, reinventing or completely revolutionizing a market where nothing looks the same as it did before. Now on the right-hand side of the chart, you see historical disruptions, just to compare to. The conversational user experience is really compared to, on the right-hand side, the existence of PCs. If you're looking at conversational user experience, talking to your computer, the same kind of investment that you had to bring PCs in is what you're going to have to bring in conversational user experience. So this is a comparative chart to show you where these things are, in which time period, and how much they affect your world. So it's a good mechanism. It's one of ours that you can use, and it leads us to the theme of this presentation. The 7 disruptions, what are they? Now they're in this picture here, and you will see them, each one. Does this make sense so far? Pretty simple stuff. But it is a mechanism that you have to embrace. And if you are a security person, the implications of security make it important for you to understand these disruptions and how your company might embrace them. So let's start with the most obvious, quantum computing. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to come up on stage and explain quantum computing to the rest of you? Because this is hard. Okay, no, all right, I'll do it. Quantum computing. I have the phrase spooky action in every computer. Einstein called a quantum theory mechanism, which is entanglement, spooky action at a distance. You know what that means? It means 2 particles that are in the universe. One has a spin like this, the other has a spin like this. No matter how far apart they are separated, no matter how close they are together, if one spin changes, the other spin will instantly change. If they were a universe apart or 3 galaxies apart, it will happen in quantum theory. That is entanglement. The particles are entangled, so they're working as a team to do something. And that mechanism is spooky in and of itself. But all of quantum computing is pretty spooky if you don't understand the mathematics behind it. In 2017, we were all working towards quantum supremacy when we said these spooky little computers can do most operations better than the average digital computer. Okay, now, you might ask the question, then what's the difference between a digital computer and a quantum computer? Well, you remember in the digital computer, we have these digital bits, right? Digital bits have a value of either 0 or 0, 1, right? You know what it is. And the interesting thing about quantum bits from a quantum computer is they have a value of 0 or 1 or 0 and 1 at the same time. It's only when the equations resolve themselves does the decision get made. Well, you watched The Big Bang Theory before it got canceled, right? You've seen Sheldon and Penny talking about Schrodinger's cat. Do you remember the cat? The most cruel scientific experiment ever devised. You put a cat in a box. In the box, you drop in a capsule with a cyanide tablet, which would break open, poison the cat at some random point. Nobody knows when. Cruel. But the point was to illustrate that before you open the box, the cat could be thought of as both alive and dead at the same time. Both answers are equally valid. It's only when you open the box and actually look, there's all sort of dead cat in there, that the truth is known. This is what a quantum computer does. It doesn't decide until the equations collapse to a state where the truth can be revealed. And so this is not easy to do. It takes a lot of qubits to do all of this. Quantum computers have a lot of errors in the qubits, so now you have a lot of linked qubits, so it takes thousands of them to get one stable qubit in some cases, because it's really hard to do. You gotta keep it cold, you gotta get rid of errors, you gotta keep vibration out of it, you gotta keep all sorts of stuff out of it. So there are new things they're looking at now. Things like noisy intermediate scale quantum, where you break the problem up into smaller problems. Things like topological qubits and quasi-particle interference, which is about structuring the shape of the particles and creating redundancy amongst particles to get rid of errors. So all of this is in the math. You don't have to know the math. All you have to know is this. 300 qubits are enough to represent a calculation, as many calculations as there are particles in the universe. 300 qubits is enough to represent as many calculations at one time as there are particles in the universe. And where are we today? We're about 30 to 40 qubits. We're a long way from real quantum computing power. Now, it's difficult to do, but once we get there, we'll be able to solve optimizations problems like detecting cancer faster, discovering new drugs, identifying complex patterns in a very complex scenario, and disrupting pharmaceuticals by actually changing the economics of how they create those drugs and bring them to market. A lot of marketing going on around quantum right now, but it is building. Now, from a security perspective, here's the scary part. Today, quantum computing is at enhance, way down on the chart. By 2030, it could be at revolutionize, changing the way we think about computing fundamentally, forever. And if it does that, the first fear is that a quantum computer could break an RSA encryption scheme in a matter of hours or a matter of short days, no matter what the scheme is. Now, that's the hype. The reality is that it takes thousands of qubits working together, stable qubits working together, to actually do something like that. But as a security expert, you have to begin to investigate the reality of it today. How much is this going to affect you and in what time frame? When are we going to get enough qubits to start worrying about your encryption keys? If you're swapping keys with someone and a quantum algorithm defeats that process in a matter of hours, you're in trouble. And anti-quantum algorithms are still a good 20 years away. Being able to have an algorithm that detects or actually is designed to thwart quantum computing could be difficult. So from a security perspective, you have to look at quantum algorithms. D-Wave and IBM both have quantum algorithms you can try on the cloud. You're getting AWS, you're getting Microsoft, you get Google, everybody's in the game. But you've got to actually start playing with this stuff and understanding it, or you will miss what it could actually happen and how it would happen to you. Real-time language translation. Universal translators for us all. If you're a Star Trek geek, who are the Star Trek geeks in the audience? No, don't raise your hand. People are going to laugh at you. I've been a Star Trek fan most of my life, and what that generally means is that those of you who are about to raise your hand didn't get dates at all during high school. That's not true, but still, people, look at these shows and they start thinking, I remember this concept. Remember the Motorola flip phone? That was designed based on the Star Trek communicator that Kirk would flip open, Kirk to Enterprise. Engineers design based on their dreams. And the universal translator is something we've always looked for. The universal translator was mentioned in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. The Babel fish. You remember the Babel fish? It was a little fish that you put in your ear. Why you would want to do this, I don't know. But you put it in your ear. The upshot of which is that it would translate whatever was said to you to your brainwave so you can understand anyone who was talking to you, no matter what language they used. I'm still trying to figure out who the first guy was that put this fish in his ear It must be like the first guy who ate a lobster. I'm sorry, you look at a lobster, that does not look like something you should eat. But somebody did it. And they discovered that it had these wonderful properties. Lobsters are great in butter. Babel fish translate language. And now we're getting our own Babel fish. The Google Translate Pixel Buds are a mechanism you put in your ear and you can talk to your phone and it will talk back to you in another language. Or you can talk have someone talk another language and it will translate it back to you in your language. 40 plus languages out there. The Waverly Pixel Buds have about 20 languages now. But they're really cool headphones, and they translate people's stuff in real time. Skype Translate's been around, but did you remember Alta Vista? Did you see the movie Captain Marvel? It was set back in the 90s, and they went on these computers, and all you saw, they went to search the internet, and they brought up Alta Vista Search. If you remember Alta Vista Search, man, you're old. I meant to say, man, you got a lot of lineage. Neither one of them worked. But anyway, Alta Vista had a service called Babel Fish that you could search and you could use to translate. It usually messed up, but now it's real. Let's look at a bit of an example, because when people can understand what others are saying, that's when the real trouble starts.
Je mets ça dans mon oreille?
Yeah, put it in your ear.
Comme ça?
Yeah.
Ok.
Can you hear me in French?
Pouvez-vous me entendre en français?
Oui! Et je peux t'entendre parler français? Mais c'est
Yes,
génial!
I can hear you talk French.
Attends, comment ça se fait? C'est
But this is awesome. But how you do it?
Yeah, it's translating. It's translating. This little wearable uses translation technology to allow two people to speak different languages, but still clearly understand each other. Simply put, when one person speaks, the other hears it in their language.
Those are Waverly Pilot earbuds, and they're pretty cool. Two people who had those things, because of them, were able to meet, to fall in love, and to break up 2 weeks later. That's when the trouble starts, when you can understand what the other person's saying, all right? If they couldn't understand each other, they'd still be together today. Language is a barrier that sometimes we accept, sometimes we don't. It's disrupting the fact that we have these intercultural barriers that are solid. We need translators, and that can be debilitating. I have to do presentations in many places. I've done them in China, I've done them all over the world. The last one I did in China was a line-by-line interpretation of what I was saying. Now imagine me talking. I talk fast, I talk a lot, having to stop after every sentence to say something while the translator translated. That was tough. But with these Pilot earbuds, you don't need it. Although sometimes translators can be cool. I did a presentation in Rome, Italy, where I was up there, one of my first presentations in Gartner. I was so happy, and I told this wonderful joke, and nobody laughed. Until 5 minutes later. What I found out was the translator heard me tell the joke, stopped because I was talking too fast, and after I finished and went on, he said, "The American has told a joke, please laugh." It was one of my best jokes. But translators can be helpful that way, so I got to laugh. So these things are changing all of that. Now, security implications. Think about this for a moment. We're talking 2019 to 2024 when it gets into transform. We're transforming industries. We are all worried. Now, how many people here have a Google Home or an Amazon Echo or Cortana or Siri that you actually use? Just a show of hands. How many people here that you actually use it? Wow, that's less than my average audience. The rest of you who didn't raise your hand, what the hell is wrong with you? I know what it is. You're worried because you don't want this thing listening to you all the time, right? You're worried about your privacy and security because that device is potentially a breach, right? So I'm inviting each one of you to come up on stage and leave your cell phone at the end of this presentation, because that is the most dangerous breach of security that you can possibly have. And we have to look at these things from the point of view of whether they will affect us personally or corporately in any significant way. The phone is a risk. So are these devices. But when you start talking about real-time language translation, this thing will be able to overhear conversations said about you in another language and tell you what they said. It's interesting because it happens. My wife is from Mexico City, and when she starts talking really fast in Spanish to her mom, and she knows I can't translate fast-spoken Spanish, I know they're talking about me. What they don't know is my pixel buds are picking up every word. So we're really think about security implications of translation and the fact that those recordings, if you use an online translation service, are recordable. And in the times in the past, people were able to search those services and find some of your messages. These things need to be shut down. These things need to be talked about in terms of what's secure and insecure about them, and to make sure we do the right things. So don't ignore it if it's not something that's on your table of plans. Number 3, nanotechnology. You've heard this one a long time. It's been around a long time. Nanotechnology is a manipulation of matter on an atomic, molecular, and supramolecular scale. Really tiny machines, okay? Now, I stretch it a little bit to get bigger machines because they're cool. But nanotechnology is something that's been around for a long time, and it's doing things today that are pretty cool. Nanotechnology embedded in a contact lens, optic eye from Bellevue, Washington. A contact lens that can project an image onto your iris that looks as big as a movie screen in a movie theater does. And no one can tell when you're walking around like this, you're actually watching a movie. These are things that we will do. And the contact lenses are just the beginning. We have self-healing material. We have plastic that bleeds. Plastic infused with nanotechnology is such that if it breaks, the nanotechnology breaks down the material, it flows into the crack and solidifies again, sealing the break. And we have nanotechnology that's being infused into 3D printing projects, where you can use nanotechnology in a 3D scaffolding to build human organs from stem cell information. Right now, the problem with 3D printing organs is not that we can't do it. We can print a kidney, we can print human skin, and we've transplanted human skin. But trying to transplant a heart or a kidney, the body will tend to reject it. But when you use stem cells, you can begin to remediate that problem too. So you have nanotechnology that can be used to be woven into things like clothing to create bulletproof suits. If you saw the movie John Wick, they had those bulletproof suits with nanotechnology in it to resist the impact force. So we're talking about a technology that can be used in so many different ways, it's very difficult to even predict what the security ramifications might be. Because nanotechnology, well, here's one. A nano device that is released in a cloud of nanobots that can go right through a sealed door. Locks won't stop it. And they can then begin to pick up information from video or listening in on your conversations. So we're talking about nanotechnology being able to permeate our very existence. And that is a security nightmare of massive proportions. So it can disrupt everything, really. But we have to think about physical security as well as information security with nanotechnology. By 2024, it'll be starting to almost transform markets. You gotta be aware and waiting for it. You know, nanotech, we got some bigger machines. One of them is the synthetic bees. You know the bees are all dying? They're disappearing, and nobody knows why. But the bees are going away, and now they're getting these little drones that are replacing bees. A tiny little drone that has a couple of Velcro strips on the bottom, which runs around, flies around, and rubs against the plant to carry the pollen from one plant to another. Next time you're out in the yard and you swat that little stinging thing, it might be a drone. Be careful. $40,000 bee swat. Okay? So the technology is coming, it will infuse everything. Swarm intelligence, number 4. Swarm intelligence. What the heck is a swarm? Well, a swarm is the collective behavior of decentralized, self-organized systems, natural or artificial. Now, we know what swarms look like. We see them all the time. Here's one, a swarm of ants. A swarm of ants can allow a group of ants to pick up an object much heavier than any one of them could lift. They can communicate information over long distances with a chain of chemical handoffs. Swarms work collectively together. They have awareness, they have solidarity, they act together. They have autonomy, they act alone. They are expandable, you can add more to it, and they have resiliency. If one dies, another will take its place. Neil McDonald did a presentation earlier this week talking about the fragility of security requirements in an IoT type world, where he said one of the mechanisms to combat it is you create new versions of the edge devices faster than hackers can figure out how to hack them. So one gets hacked, instead of preventing the hack, you just shut the one that was hacked off and a new one pops up to take its place. That is swarm technology. Flocking behavior. Like birds, when they fly in a V shape, they're flying that way for a reason. The ones that are flying at the front take the brunt of the effort. The ones flying at the back get to rest. That's why they switch every now and then. Swarms will be able to direct machines across agricultural fields, where those fields are being fertilized or they're using pesticides, and the swarm can tell you how the pesticides are working across the average of the entire field at once. That technology will allow us to do things like coordinate search systems to find missing people. It will allow us to solve problems of navigating through very complicated spaces like an underwater trench to figure out and map the bottom of the ocean floor, because swarms work collectively together. Now, a swarm problem in security, it's similar. I remember that example I said, nanotechnology, going through your door. Those would be swarming bots, swarming together to figure out how to break your security. Feed it back to a quantum computer and you're out of luck. So when we talk about swarms, we're really talking about collaborative problem solving. We're talking about analytics that is done in a collaborative fashion, not one point at a time, but looking at millions of data points all at the same time and collaborating to solve a problem that we couldn't solve. And we don't have to use quantum computing to do it. A swarm can do advanced analytics, truly advanced analytics. So we're looking at 2019 to 2024, it'll still be pretty low on the chart because there's not a lot of companies looking to use swarms right now. But if you want to see some cool videos, there's some old videos that are really cool still. Swarm quadcopters. Look up swarming quadcopters on YouTube and watch these 150 little drone helicopters all flying in formation, doing whatever they do, and all of them communicating with one another. So swarms are out there, and we have to look for them. Number 5, human-machine interfaces. I think, therefore, the cursor moves. In 2004, IBM patented the merger of a human synapse, brain synapse, with silicon. And today, we now have mechanisms that take us way beyond that. Super abilities are emerging. Not the singularity, that notion where man and machine merge together. You've heard that one, right? People talk about man and machine, and all the women in the room are going, hey, you go ahead, merge, buddy. It's okay with me. But we're not talking about that. What we're talking about is the very fact that people with disabilities are gaining technologies that make them able to do things they couldn't do when they were able-bodied. A Blade Runner wearing those little curved blades who's lost a leg can run faster than a non-bladed human. With hearing aids today, you can hear things that humans without hearing aids can't hear. These are super abilities, and one that we absolutely need is thought control. We absolutely need to be able to control machines with our thoughts. Today, it is possible to think at a computer. Now is the time for all good people to come to the aid of their country, and it will type it out for you. It's relatively slow, but it will do it. Brain-computer interface technology allows, and MIT's been doing a lot of it with their alter ego project, allows paraplegics, instead of blowing in a tube to move their laptop or to type a message, they can think, and the machine will do what they want them to do. It leads to ideas like mind-link technology, where you could create a relationship between a human brain and a device that is inserted in the spine of a person whose spine has been damaged, where there's a break, and the person's brain signal can't get to their legs, so they can't walk. The spinal shunt will actually allow the human to think at the shunt. The shunt translates the signals, carries them past the break in the spine, so you can think, move my right leg, and it moves. People who can't walk can think and walk again. This is technology that's sitting out there. What's up next, though? Pulling images directly from the human brain. Did you know that it is possible right now, and I cannot show you the image because I don't have permission for it, but I will tweet out the address to a science article on it. There are many out there. It is possible for a computer today to take an image of what you are thinking about or a picture that you have seen directly from your brain and print it out on a printer. Now, I have all my life, like many of you, had a dream person. I dream about this person periodically. She is perfect. And yet I can never remember what she looks like when I wake up. This technology will allow the computer to take my dream person out of my head and print a picture of her. My wife is getting nowhere near that picture. But the idea of a computer taking things directly out of your brain has security implications that are massive. When you think about a machine being able to tell what your password was because you walked too close to it. And this is a long way away. 2032 at least before we start reinventing markets. Revolutionizing won't get here until 2050, where we're really talking about these machines being able to do these things. But, you know, back in the day, people used to think they should wear foil hats to thwart the signals that aliens were sending down or the government was sending. Maybe you're gonna have to wear a foil hat to keep a computer from reading your mind. That is an actual possibility. So when we're looking at these things, we have to think about different angles on them. Think about how it might affect the way that we actually think about information in the world. The Matrix is a fictional movie, but the concepts have validity in science. It's just a matter of time before we can make some of them work. But on the more mundane side, we have software marketplaces. Two more here. Number 6, software marketplaces. What we're talking about is the movement of $450 billion of spend on software licenses into subscriptions through a marketplace or through a series of marketplaces. So you can get one-stop shopping, try before you buy. You can get disaster recovery, one single bill for all of your software through this marketplace. You can get App Store-like extensions where your software gets updated with a little flag that says, hey, you need to update, there's a new version, and it automatically does a download and update, all through a software marketplace. That kind of thing changes channel strategies, changes the way that you have a relationship with the providers of the software and who your intermediaries are. Right now, AWS Marketplace is the 800-pound gorilla out there showing the world how it's done because they know how to do it in the marketplace. Did you know that Amazon.com's best value proposition is not as an e-commerce company? It is in creating new e-commerce companies because thousands of companies are doing e-commerce through Amazon.com. If they apply that to a software marketplace, all of a sudden your relationships begin to change, the channels change, and you have new influencers in your life. It's not just Amazon, it's Google, it's Microsoft, it's Ingram Micro, it is Tech Data, it is Arrow, AppDirect, all of them are trying to get marketplace software to work the right way. And if they can do it, all of this becomes easier for us. Updates are easier, patches, software patches, security hole patches become easier. So we start thinking about how the marketplace changes our security posture, how we can swap out the entire software infrastructure quickly, at least at the image level, and be able to fix a security problem. So this software distribution and ownership gets changed forever, and we are better for it. And then finally, number 7, smartphone disintermediation. You all have those smartphones, you're taking pictures with them, you're having fun with them. One day you will not need them anymore. And after you stop crying, you'll realize that it's not a bad thing. We all have smartphones because we love our smartphones, we hug them, and we kiss them at night. But what happens when your smartphone is no longer the center of your universe? We go into a post-mobile era. And what we're talking about here is your smartphone actuates and tracks every other device, your car, your lights, your oven, your refrigerator, I saw a smartphone-enabled toilet. Why I need a smartphone-enabled toilet, I don't know. But I downloaded the app. You never know. So smartphones do everything, but why? Why do we have to have them do everything? What happens is they get disintermediated when the smartphone gets replaced by device manufacturers who create a new fabric of communication. Today, smartphones are gated by the carriers, the ones who own the fabric of communication. When someone puts up a low orbit network of satellites and they can communicate directly to them from devices, every device becomes essentially its own smartphone. You can make a phone call from any device. I was driving in the car, my daughter called me, she doesn't have a phone. I said, Jamie, how are you calling me? She says, I went up to Alexa and I said, Alexa, call Dad. And it did. I was perplexed because I never gave Alexa my phone number. So that gives some credence to you people who don't have one. Wow, I never thought of it that way. But still, the idea is what happens when you can talk to your front door or your toilet and say, call Dad. Don't do that. But still, the idea changes everything. So we have devices. The Amazon Echo Auto is a device like this, a Magic Leap headphones, the Samsung Galaxy Watch, the Galaxy 10, I think, watch. But these are all now devices that can communicate directly. Opens issues of ethics, security for a device that's communicating, and there is no central network authority. The idea of privacy and the information that's passed around with these devices, who are you going to trust in this world? It is coming. It's going to take a while to get here. 2024, we'll start reinventing markets. By that time, you should start looking for alternatives to cell phones. You should already be experiencing more devices than you can manage in your security posture. You have to start now planning for managing all those devices. So there you have 7 disruptions you might not see coming. These are all filled with security implications for those who are willing to recognize them. So digital giants like Amazon and Google don't lead by accident. They disrupt deliberately. It's your job to do so as well. Help to create disruptor clients, disruptor CIOs, disruptor executives, so that you can actually be more better positioned to do the right thing in the future. If you do it right, then it's a lot less about danger, and more, it's about opportunity. Thank you very much for listening today, and enjoy the rest of the conference.